Hello, welcome. This is Dr. Jaitly. I'm your cardiologist from New York. I thank you for your watching MuniMeterHealth on Facebook and YouTube, as also going on my website, MuniMeterHealth.com, and spreading the word about human heart awareness and sharing with your loved ones, friends, and your colleagues. Welcome again to MuniMeterHealth. I was returning back from India only about 2 weeks ago, and I met some of the most brilliant and eminent physicians and also their staff. Several discussions came along, and I really wanted to bring something very commonly heard about, which is now catching more word around the globe, and that is organ transplantation. There is a need for an organ, specifically so when an organ is failing or has failed. And that's where the organ transplantation really has its place. So I just wanted to give you a little gist and some overview as to where we are with the current statuses in various organ transplantations across the globe. So obviously we know heart transplantation has been going around for like decades now, but still it is a staggering number. We do only about roughly 6,000 to 7,000 heart transplantations across the globe, of which, of course, more than 50% are being performed in the US. The problem is one, and we'll discuss that more later on during the course of this video, very short video. But the whole idea is wanting to see how best we can equate the need and, of course, the availability, because the availability has to be from a donor, and it has to be a cadaveric donor, unfortunately. But the fact is that the heart transplantations are growing to a very, very slow stage, unfortunately. One, because of the cost. Two, because of the feasibilities yet and the logistics. And above all, again, you have to equate the taboos and the myths that are associated within the society. There are people who are may not be interested in getting a blood transfusions, but at the same time, they may not be also definitely interested in getting any tissue transplantation either. So the point is that, we have to overcome certain aspects before we can actually increase these numbers and perhaps offer the needy ones, specifically who are waiting on the waiting list for sometimes months and years before they actually even qualify. And most important and above all is the HLA and blood and tissue matching, which also is required first. Now, there is a national registry which most countries maintain. I know India does it, and US does it, and UK does it, and importantly, big countries, South Africa does it, and Australia does it. So there are a lot of countries which have their own waiting lists and a registry from a national institute of their own country that maintains which organ transplantations, what HLA and blood tissue matching are available and or are needed for the waiting recipients. Having said that, the allografts are the homografts, which are obviously from the living persons, and therefore one can actually get a kidney transplantation from a living person, from a living donor, obviously, because we have a set of 2 kidneys, and 1 kidney could be donated to the person right here. And you could see the person who has failed, the classic patient is who has failed on dialysis or has progressively worsened on renal failure rather quickly and does not wish to get on dialysis, or is there a contraindication for dialysis, then those patients will qualify for a renal transplantation. And again, renal transplantation are only about 4,000 to 5,000 happening in a year in the US. I don't have the numbers for the entire globe, but obviously they are very popular. So kidney transplants are still the most commonest transplants happening in the world. Second to follow are the heart transplants, which are very popular transplants, but may not be as commonly heard happening. And then, of course, you have skin, lungs, pancreas, and intestinal transplants occurring as well. Bone marrow transplantation, specifically so in leukemic patients or aplastic anemic patients, specifically so in young children and young adolescents. They are unfortunately on the waiting list for too long and waiting for a blood bone marrow transplantation to happen, either from their compatible twin and or from a family member, or sometimes even from a strange person who is unknown, obviously, on the list. So there are ways where we can increase the numbers, but there are equations which are tending to not to have that increased globally. But nevertheless, there is room to know more, understand the transplants that occur more and more so. Here in this schematic, I've shown how the heart-lung transplantation, by the way, has been a common entity, especially in congenital heart disease, where we know there is a reversible pulmonary hypertension, and when it becomes irreversible, then a lung transplantation is also done at the same time. And many times a question is asked whether, specifically on the board, can a man receive a woman's organ? The answer is yes. Of course, it has to have an HLA and blood tissue matched, but nevertheless, it has to have a compatible age and or at least the size matching, etc. Specifically, so like a child will receive a child's donor organ, if you will. Very importantly, I do want to, before I conclude on this video vignette, is more innovative drugs are happening, and specifically so the immunosuppressives and the antiviral drugs, because obviously huge number of CMV viruses and other very tedious fungal infections that can occur post-transplantations, etc., etc., because of the immunosuppression that's being offered to prevent the rejections that commonly occur either immediately or later on after the post-transplant period. The innovative drugs are really replacing a great deal of those problems and circumventing a great deal of post-transplant issues or complications. And as a result, the survival patterns are improving, and one should know that. Even though at a very heavier cost, obviously, because each time a new drug is on the block, a new kid is on the block, it comes with a huge price. And so that's one of the issues that we have to also equate within the equation here to understand what limits and what helps the transplant list grow or improve. The other issues are obviously, as I said, there are certain myths that we feel, in certain sects of societies where transplants could be taboos, etc. But those have to be overcome. The more we educate those societies, those patients, and those members of the society, I think we can gain a great deal. But nevertheless, the good news is that an organ donor can save up to 8 to 10 lives, and that's amazing. Like, for instance, cornea. There are people who are dying of blindness, people who are blind throughout their lives after maybe a corneal opacity that developed after traumatic injury or some infection, etc., etc. And you give a corneal transplant, that patient, all he or she needs is a clear corneal membrane, and the rest of the eye is all intact, and next thing is the person starts seeing the whole world in full colors. So it's an exciting opportunity, and I think one should really understand that, look, there are donors which are still falling short of the recipients that are waiting on the list, and therefore I think it's a noble idea that needs to flourish more globally. So spread the word and understand organ transplantation more. Again, supplement this knowledge with as you go forward through various journals and texts. Specifically, so if you're a resident, fellow, and an intern or a colleague of mine in my field, and you'll be surprised that, as I always said, that learning never ends. But then at the same time, keep supplementing the knowledge and move forwards on MuniMeterHealth. That's one of the goals at MuniMeterHealth.com, where we advance human heart awareness and human body awareness to the best of the best ability of the health and illness. Thank you again for your attention, and looking forward to seeing you in my next. This is Dr. Jaitly again. Bye.